today we have the next generation of anti-fraud, but we will definitely touch a couple of points which I'm gonna walk you through right now. We picked 3 topics on Agile AI and the opportunity for the overall insurance market, right? So today you are participating in the next gen of claims transformation and anti-fraud topic, and how to leverage Agile AI to implement those solutions and processes. In June, we will be talking about how to leverage Agile AI for customer retention as well. And then in July, we will touch that very exciting topic, which is profitability and growth, and what is the role of AI and the processes led by AI in that topic. So let me jump to one of the most important parts. So thanks Tazi.ai, our gold sponsor for these 3 webinars, which is actually, let me not say anything because I'll keep that part to Zehra to describe what Tazi is and the great things that they are doing for the insurance industry overall. Today we are covering a couple of really interesting topics actually. So the goal of today is hopefully you will be able to walk away from this webinar, hopefully at the end of the webinar, with a couple of insights about transformation and trends in the claims area. Particularly, we will touch a little bit overall industry, but really focused on claims, especially impact of the pandemic and not only pandemic, but a little bit changes that we are going through and the impacts of that. We're really, 3 of us, we're really designing this webinar, and the content we're really focused on being able to give you actionable insights so that you have concrete takeaways from this, and hopefully you will be able to identify some opportunities for implementation for your areas wherever you are in the world. So a couple of topics that we will cover: insurance transformation insights, insights about technology and claims, particularly the transformation during and post-pandemic, which is a very exciting and topic for the insurance industry, and Taylor definitely has some metrics to share with you, because his firm has done a couple of two surveys that he will be able to share with the claims officers, which will give us the insights. Then we will be able to talk about the overall problem of fraud, in code problem. We will define that problem. We will talk about challenges in fraud detection, and then we will end up talking about how to leverage AI, Agile AI, as a solution to address those problems and more. All right, so today we have Zehra, CEO and co-founder of Tazi.ai. They're doing great things in terms of AI and enabling the insurance industry and carriers and brokers. We have Taylor Smith, the president of Suite 200 Solutions, and you have myself as moderating the discussion, not a subject matter expert in claims or AI, but I'll do my best. So maybe we can start with a quick intro about Zehra, yourself, and Tazi.
Thank you so much, Doğan, and good morning, good afternoon, everyone, wherever you are. I'll just say a little bit about Tazi and a little bit about myself. I'm very happy to be with Taylor and Doğan in this conversation. At Tazi, our purpose in starting our company is actually to create complete solutions. So not just AI experiments, not AI models, but to create complete solutions which are easy to deploy and which actually give you results, and they keep giving you results. And the reason why they are easy to deploy and they continue giving you results are because of some underlying technology that we are going to be talking about. In general, we have been able to create a complete working solution in 2 to 4 weeks. And our AI systems are continuously learning, so they are able to self-maintain themselves. And we have already done many use cases, especially in insurance and also in finance, retail, and manufacturing. And we have these, excellent clients that we have been able to work with so far. And I'll just conclude by saying what Bill Verys told about us. He called us the next generation of automated machine learning because of the underlying technology. It's not just machine learning, it's not just automated machine learning, it's next generation because it's able to self-maintain, it's able to be created easily and deployed easily. And we have been a Gartner co-vendor. I'm very proud to say one of the 4 companies worldwide in 2019 because of our technology in core AI technologies. We are a recent graduate of Alchemist Accelerator. And I was named the Women Entrepreneur of the Year by organizations such as Microsoft. So I'm very happy to be here with you guys. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Zehra. We can continue with Taylor, with yourself and your firm and how you are contributing to the insurance industry, which you are doing amazing stuff.
Well, thanks very much, Doğan, and I'm really flattered to be here to be part of a Neon Network discussion. I think your organization's already become a very vibrant community for interesting conversations about transformation across the entire insurance ecosystem. And the conversation with Zehra and Tazi is a perfect example of that, because I think what they're doing is just fascinating. I run Suite 200 Solutions, which I formed a number of years ago, essentially as a mechanism to improve the way in which the different groups in the claims and litigation management arenas work together. So we have a group of advisors, most of whom are former chief claim officers, chief transformation officers, who work with claim organizations directly. We also work with the law firm community in the insurance defense litigation arena. And we work a great deal with emerging and interesting technology companies. We have a transaction advisory group where we match interesting investment opportunities and acquisition opportunities with a wide range of capital partners partnerships that we've formed over the years. And so that's our group. And really looking forward to the discussion today. And for those in the audience and those attendees, my goal today will be to share some survey results. So we do a fair amount of market intelligence work in the industry. And these factoids and facts and figures, I think, always help to set a context for a broader conversation about technology and transformation. So
thank you so much, Taylor.
Sure.
So I'll go ahead and start the conversation with just a really few quick insights just to set up the stage about the overall insurance industry transformation, right? And I really have very quick 2 slides here. The first one is actually pandemic triggered transformation. This was not triggered by pandemic, but it was definitely accelerated by pandemic for the unfortunate pandemic that we went through and we are going through still. If you look at this is my personal opinion, insurance was in the center of all that since day one, right? Because of the nature of our business, we had to be there and protect all the businesses and people and all the consumers, customers, which is our nature, really. But that also made us realize that that change management, that innovation processes that some of the industry players realized that they needed to go through, and there was some resistance, right, to technology. AI is coming, is it going to replace my role? So there's that little bit of resistance to change. I'm picking on AI, but there are so many things that examples that I can show. I think with unfortunate pandemic, we basically realized going remote and everything, we cannot operate as we have been operating for many years, right? So so that's why you can see in every pillar, in every value chain step of insurance industry, you can see those developments and changes, and you can definitely see more investments, and more partnerships with Insurtechs, more innovation, teams and discussions are popping up within each company, and definitely more support for this kind of processes, and reshaping the future of insurance and how our future processes will look like, capabilities will look like from the top management. That was not fully there, I feel like. So I'm not going to go into each and every pillar of the value chain, of course, because I want to give the real time to the speakers. But one thing that I want to also mention is, this is coming from Deloitte's study, actually. So they have interviewed the insurance companies and executives. And this is an interesting discussion, the practical, theoretical conversation, because we come up with a lot of theoretical conversations, and I think many years ago the whole industry went into that route, but we quickly realized that we need to really focus on the practical side of things. So I wanted to really show this, which is giving a couple of insights where, within the next 2-3 years, this is a study from the beginning of 2021. For the next 3 years, we're looking at a 95% of the industry expecting an increase in the use of advanced analytics. It's not only data, it's also the technology around that data, how to digest that data, how to connect the dots, and then give our more frontline people, like underwriters, like distribution folks and claims folks, more ability to operate with more capabilities, rather than let's face it, 50% of their time. It's not a metric, but I always use that. A lot of their time going to data entry and not really using their own capabilities and expertise that we really need. That's exactly why they are hired, and they have that experience, benefiting the industry and the companies. So if we can find a way, my focus always has been, when it comes to insurance innovation, if we can find a way to create those kind of efficiencies, relieving time from those folks, so that they can actually, using that so much experience that they have and the information about the industry, they can now focus on innovation as well. So now we are getting into a very interesting stage of the industry, where we are focusing on relieving time of those experts, and you definitely see a boost in Insurtech, carrier, and broker, all the organizations, actually, partnership opportunities with Insurtechs. So you can definitely see a promising future in terms of insurance innovation and more capabilities. I'll stop there, because if you don't stop me, I can keep going with those. So I'll actually I wanna maybe turn to Taylor here to now, in terms of claims specifically, to prepare the stage a little bit and share insights.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Don. As you were talking about the pace of transformation and how it has accelerated, I'm reminded of the fact that very early in the pandemic, I was talking to a very good friend of mine who's the senior claim officer in a 4,000 person claim shop. And as we were talking, he said, "I'm looking out my window. Hundreds of my employees have shopping carts. They're taking their desktops to their car." And of course, I immediately thought of all the cybersecurity risks and the HIPAA issues and all those kinds of things. But he said, change is happening, and it's happening fast. And I think that one of the things that the pandemic certainly has created in the midst of this huge disruption to our entire insurance ecosystem is the fact that people absorb change much faster than they would have normally adopted it, and they've survived. And it's given people a comfort level with the ability to change. And then I think, as we'll talk about with Tazi, there are some changes that are harder than others, or better said, some that are easier than others, and new ways now of looking at new technology, which are less painful than they used to be. And I think that's a factor as well. Just very briefly for the attendees to set this up, the goal in sharing some of these statistics that came out of the surveys that we've done, I think is just really to provide a context. I think it helps to see a context for talking about transformation. It's a commonly used term in our industry, and I think numbers help to frame up some of the things that are going on within it. I particularly wanted to focus on sort of the industry's perceptions of what it means to return to normal. We've used claim frequency as one of those indicators, the number of claims that claims organizations are being asked to handle in the property casualty environment. And we'll talk about some other questions that we asked as well. So let's go to the next slide if we could, Dawn. And let me talk about the first study. So we've done a great deal of work with a great organization called the Claims and Litigation Management Alliance. And if you don't know that organization, I encourage you to learn more about it. It is now about 50,000 people strong, and it's dedicated to promoting and furthering standards across the claims and litigation management industry. The studies that we've done, including this one I'll discuss now, can be found at the link that you see on your screen on our primary website. But this study that I'll talk about was done, the data was gathered in November and December of 2020. So just orient yourself a little bit around that, getting a sense for, we sort of considered the pandemic to have started in March. In June of last year, we did our first CLM commissioned claim frequency study, trying to identify what the impact had been so far after 3 months, essentially, of the pandemic itself. And this study, which I'll talk about today, was a follow-up then done more or less 5-6 months later. Let's go to the next slide if we could. Again, the first study, as you'll see, was done in June with 73 claim executives. The second study, the one I'll be talking about 65 claim executives. And as I mentioned, we added a few questions, which I'll review the answers to with you as well. Let's go to the next slide if we could, Dawn. Just to give you a flavor for this, these were primarily all chief claim officers who participated. Some of them tasked teams in their groups to assemble data for us. But for the most part, this was taken directly with chief claim officers. This is all property casualty, no life, health, etc. And you'll see that about 6% of the respondents were represented third-party claim administrators, again, in the property casualty space. You can see also sort of an equal breakdown there in terms of premium size. So we were pretty evenly split between large, moderate, and smaller claim organizations. Those premiums obviously not relating to the 6% that were from TPAs. Okay, let's go to the next slide if we could. The primary findings won't, I don't think, surprise you. They are that the industry continues, and by continues, I mean November and December of last year, to experience overall claim volume decreases, but the extent of those decreases had diminished significantly. The average percentage decrease had gone down in every single line. And in terms of back to normal, in other words, what claim officers felt was sort of where they would have expected to be without the pandemic, property lines, both commercial and personal, had the highest percentage of that sort of back to normal. So let's go to the next slide if we could. So these are the number of the percentage of respondents who reported a decrease. And you can see, particularly relevant to our conversation about auto fraud today, that 100% of the executives who had auto in their book of business, 100% of them reported a decrease. You see that with personal lines auto damage, you see 100% with liability, and you can see that 72% of people in the commercial space also reported a decrease. Okay, let's go to the next. This, I think, is a more interesting slide to people because it begins to identify the amount of decrease. So for those with decreases, by November and December, people were reporting that a volume is down still by a quarter. Now, to give you some comparison point, when we did this survey in June, that 23% you see on the top was 30%. It's down by almost a third. And now it had dropped to a little bit less than a quarter. In personal lines auto damage, you can see a 22% decrease. That number had been 33%. If you look on the right side of the page, commercial lines, vehicle liability at 23%, that had been 31%. And so if you look at this whole big picture, by November and December, we were looking at things being down about a quarter from what they normally had been, with the exception, obviously, of workers' comp, which had even greater average decreases. Let's go to the next slide, if we could, Dawn. It's probably important to highlight, just in a big sort of macro setting, that there are lines of business that had a lot of people that said, we basically don't have any changes. We haven't experienced a lot. And you would expect this. I mentioned that property, both commercial and personal, was pretty much back to normal. But you can see commercial specialty liability, more than half said they were back to normal, basically. And that gives you a flavor for some areas of the risk spectrum that essentially were less impacted than others during the pandemic. Okay, let's go to the next slide, if we could. So we asked a lot of questions about when are things going to get back to normal? And I am pleased to share that my colleagues in the claims community are a pretty optimistic bunch. Might not think that some days, but in fact, their prediction was, and you'll see a typo in this, the second bar is obviously Q2 and not Q1 of 2021. But you can see that in the big picture, 79%, almost 80% predicted that by June, we're going to be out of this. You know, again, this was done in December. If you look at this chart, these are December numbers. A very small percent said it's going to last into 2022. So I put that up there. Hold those thoughts in your mind. Let me ask a favor, Dawn. Skip the next slide and go to the one after that, if you would. Because in April of 2021, I was at a meeting with about 40 senior claim officers, almost all chief claim officers. And I had a chance to ask this question again. And I wanted to highlight how these numbers had changed. You will remember that 80% in December said we're going to be good by June. That number has now essentially dropped to less than 40%. So from 79 to 30%. And you will see an enormous jump in those executives who feel that it may not be until 2022 or later that claims frequency is going to return to normal. So that's a big change. And I think it reflects, you know, what we're all going through personally and professionally as we watch the pandemic roll out. I will say that I was surprised to see these numbers be less optimistic in April than they were in December, given the advent of vaccines and other changes to the pandemic more broadly. But I think this is important for any of the attendees watching to understand sort of the sentiments and thoughts of their colleagues in claims leadership across the industry. So let's go back one slide if we could, and talk briefly about business interruption claims. This has obviously been an emerging and a very important potential threat to the insurance industry more broadly. You will see that 60% of respondents reported that they had, in fact, an increase in business interruption claims. And that, that mean increase was above 100%, because those who are seeing increases are seeing potentially very big ones based on the way their policies are written and a number of other factors. So I thought I would just throw that in there, not directly relevant to our auto fraud conversation today. Okay, let's go to the next slide if we could, Dawn. And go to the next one after that. Good. So this is relevant to today's discussion. And I think there are a variety of potential reasons behind this response, but we asked this question in December. This was a newly added question to the second part of the COVID-19 claim frequency study that we were doing. Almost a fourth, 24%, reported that their percentage of suspected fraudulent claims has increased. And that's with a group that 15% of whom weren't actually sure. And so we just categorized them as an I don't know. So that's a big number. And I think, speaking anecdotally with claim officers, I think there's a thought that the fraudulent claims keep coming in, even when there is there's a decrease in generalized miles driven related auto risks and accidents. And as a result, that percentage goes higher. But I think that magnifies the relevance of the conversation we're going to have about auto fraud today. Okay, let's go to the next slide if we could, Dawn. There are a few comments here that I won't go through in any detail. I just wanted to highlight, for those of you who are interested, you can obtain a copy of the study and see pages of these comments. I do think that they're interesting in the big picture because they underline some things we'll talk about today, but more broadly, where people are seeing risks to the entire claims ecosystem. And if you start going through these comments, you'll see comments about societal changes. You'll see comments about increased litigation. You'll see comments about new financial risks for the industry, particularly if people are trying to transfer risk for COVID-related things to insurance carriers. Let's go to the next slide very briefly. And again, you'll see just comments about injury severity in all lines of business, including auto and the concerns about that. You'll see comments about people's prediction that more and more virtual tools are going to be used. And then on the next slide, if we could, you'll see that people are predicting less miles driven. That's probably not a surprise to all of us, given the changes that are going on. More comments about claim severity, more comments about social inflation, which is a very important topic across the P&C world right now. Okay, let's go to the next slide, if we could. I mentioned that I was at a meeting with 40 chief claim officers in April, and we thought it would be fun to take advantage of that fact by asking some other questions. And I've shown you one of them, which is sort of, where they stand on things returning to normal in terms of claim frequency. And a pretty high number that, suggests that it's going to be in 2022 or beyond. But I wanted to share these 5 questions because, again, I think they set a contextual framework for a conversation about transformation within claims. So let's go to the next slide if we could, Dawn, and I'll grab this first one. There's been a lot of discussion about whether the organization, the claims organization, rather generically, is going to take advantage of the new pace of transformation, the new tools that they've learned about as they carted their desktops off to their car trunks with shopping carts, and whether they're going to learn from that and what the post-pandemic environment might be. So we asked this very basic question: do you expect fundamental changes to your loss adjustment expenses as we emerge from COVID when compared to pre-COVID? You'll see that more than half, 56% believe that their expenses will be down. 20%, 1 out of 5, say that their expenses are going to be substantially less. And in my view, this is transformative to an industry when more than half say that their costs are going to be less as a result of what they've experienced over the last 14 months or so. Okay, let's go to the next slide. And we have about 4 slides left, I think, and then we'll transition into a conversation about Tazi in this context. I thought it was just sort of interesting because technology, has enabled an awful lot of virtual interactions. We're having a virtual interaction right now, I was curious as to whether or not the industry is ready to get back to traveling, to be together, to do things in person that we've been doing virtually for some period of time. I think some of the takeaways from this question, which was, does your claim organization have a current ban or restriction on travel for conferences, customer visits, and non-claim adjusting activity? And this is now April of 2021 when this question was asked. For 75% of those chief claim officers, their organization's travel policy is still changed. 20% believe they're going to be back to normal by September, but for a full quarter, about 1 out of 4 there's no date for lifting those restrictions. So it's going to be interesting to see how the industry carries forward in light of that. Let's go to the next question, if we could, Dawn. What are the long-term projections of how the claims work environment is going to be affected by COVID? And we were talking mostly virtual, mostly work at home and so forth. There are some numbers here that I just think are amazing. 95% say that work is going to be different. Almost half, 45%, say they're going to be substantially virtual. And if you think through this number for a second, a full 10% say no more physical facilities. We are 100% work at home or virtual. That's transformative as well for an industry. I think it affects how people look at technology. I think it affects the openness and receptivity to looking at new and better ways of doing things. I think it's a big deal when the work environment gets changed to this extent. So let's go to the next slide, if we could.
Taylor, quick, if I can interrupt you here, just a quick question. When we discuss about this in our prep calls, right, for this webinar, the term that you kept using, transformative technology. So just to highlight here, it's not only about working from home, right? It's about the entire organization implementing those processes and digital enablements, if you will, so that people can do their work, but people can do their work better as well.
Do their work better. I think that, you know, the virtual environment, people think of it as the absence of being together, but in fact, it requires different skill sets. It requires different ways of viewing productivity. It requires different ways of gathering data and analyzing data. I mean, to me, transformative means doing things in a different way with either the same or an improved benefit, but with less effort. You know, and that's you know, a broad sort of generic, you know, Captain Obvious kind of definition. But to me, particularly, let's take, for example, the litigation management space, Dawn. You know, I was just in conversation with either the first or second largest insurance defense firm in the United States. And they were forced into different work patterns, taking depositions virtually, doing interviews virtually, looking at documents in different ways. I mean, everything was changed. They were forced into it, not unlike the people hauling their desktops out to their trunk, you know, in a shopping cart. But what they've seen is an improvement in the benefit to their clients. And as a result of that, many of their best practices now push the way they've been doing it over a return to let's all go back and do it in person again. And that to me is transformative. It means that they're able to deliver more benefit at less cost in that particular example. And that's in a very conservative section of the arena of the industry. You know, that's law firms and litigation management. That, you know, there's only a limited amount of change that you might really push there. And I think claims organizations are moving even more quickly. Does that respond to your comment?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, so let's go to what I think is the last slide. And then I've taken too much time and I want Zehra to move in very quickly. This question was asked about claims transformation. And our question was trying to affirm or deny that our thought that transformation has picked up in pace. More than half, 55%, say that claim transformation in their organization is faster. I think the real takeaway from this slide, another takeaway from this slide is if you look up there, you'll see that only 6%, 1 out of 20, say that they aren't doing any claim transformation at all. That's a tiny number. So go talk to 20 claim people and you'll find one that's not doing much, that's too interesting, and the other 19 are doing a lot. And for more than 10%, the pace of transportation is significantly faster than it had been previously. And that is, for me, a great segue to Zehra to talk about the kinds of tools that fit into models where people are trying to move faster, more efficiently, and with that accelerated pace of transformation.
Absolutely. And I think with that, you prepared such a good stage for Zehra just to step in and talk about now the fraud and the challenges in that area, and how we leverage AI as a solution, right? So I'll just turn to Zehra and just take the lead.
Thank you so much, Doğan and Taylor, actually, for setting the stage. I just want to emphasize two things here. Doğan, in your picture, when you talked about transformation, in that Deloitte study, you had two business experts running together with the AI, we usually put AI as a robot. And that reminded me of the following. We associate AI with very complex models, and usually it is not us, like human beings versus AI are seen as separate things. But when change happens, and then what we need to predict is not just cats and dogs, but things that change all the time, then that brings two things. One of them is we need our modeling to be as simple as possible. It should not be very complex. I mean, it should not be too complex, because if modeling is too complex, then AI models can overfit. And also, it becomes very difficult to communicate what's happening with the models. And you need to keep communicating among business experts, among different departments, to really understand what's happening with your customers, with your claims. So it is not just a technology change. It's really a whole culture change in organizations. So people need to realize that they are actually not going to be able to sit next to each other and have diffusion of knowledge while they are having a cup of tea or coffee. And that happens. I mean, anybody who does any work of enough complexity, I'm sure you realize that you actually solve lots of problems while you are talking with your colleagues over a cup of water or tea. And that's not there anymore when you are working remotely. So you have to have processes, and you have to have documentation, continuous documentation, and easy documentation, because you cannot just keep documenting. Automated documentation of what's happening with your data, and also with the models. And the models need to be really very not too complex, not more complex than necessary. That reminds me of a children's book. I really enjoyed reading books to my children when they were little. There is this book called Tiki Tiki Tembo no Serembo, Cheriberi Ruchi Piperi Pembo. I mean, it's a very funny name. It's about why Chinese names are short, written by true non-Chinese people, obviously. In that book, there is a child who falls in the water, in the well, and then the younger child tries to tell people, "My brother is in the well. Tik tik tam ona Serembo is in the well," and people are like, "What are you talking about? What's happening? Tell me." Right. So while you are trying to communicate that complex idea, people don't realize that somebody fell in the well. So you have to really have very simple ways to communicate, so that with the cats and dogs are there. They don't change. With COVID, before we had claims here, now we have claims there, and in Q3 claims will be here. So you need AI models and in general modeling techniques, which are very simple, so that they are able to adapt to change without overfitting the change. And they are also able to be communicated among different people, because at the end, people will be taking actions. So I just wanted to, thank you.
No, sorry, Zehra, for interrupting you. I just want to inject myself before you, because you have so many good data and insights and cases to share. I feel like AI has been such a popular topic in our industry, where everybody is aware that it's happening, but really few people understood how it is happening and what the real impact is. But when you talk to everyone, oh yeah, AI, of course, we are implementing, but what is the concept? And what is the content, real content of it. And you know, in my interactions, I saw a lot of, oh, the topic is AI. Okay, we have a data scientist. You can talk to him, or you know, you talk to our IT department. That's your avenue kind of approaches. I'm so glad that it is changing, because you touched that point that it's a business conversation. It's not a tech conversation anymore. I think we evolved from that. And the problem and solutions that you're going to share right now shows us exactly that.
Yes, yes. It's a very, very good point, Don, because you know, as I said, if it was very simple, I mean, if business was very simple, then it could be just the business of data science people. But business processes involved in insurance have always been complex, and they are even getting even more complex and complicated as life changes. So it cannot be just AI belongs to data science people, let them do whatever they want. It cannot really work like that, because what I see is most of the work is really, you know, the devil is really in the details, and it's very easy for a non-expert to miss stuff. So you need continuous communication and continuous monitoring of not just AI models, but also data, and also the outcomes, the actions also need to be continuously monitored, and they have to be made available to everybody, even if they don't know how to take tree integrals, even if they are not data scientists. So we are going completely towards a no-code and business usable platform. That's what our platform does, actually. If you want, we can go to the next slide. I'll try to be as efficient as Taylor has been. So neither my background nor my voice is as good as you, Taylor, but you know, I'll do my best here. What we have seen through the conversations in insurance industry is obviously there is massive, like 10 to 15 to even, we even heard like 20 to 30% claim fraud based on, you know, which area you are looking at, and especially insurance companies with not hundreds of data scientists are really not able to catch up, and they might even be able to catch as little as less than 2% of fraud. And that obviously comes back to all of us as about $700 per year in increased annual premiums. So we are all paying for the cost of the fraud. If you would like, we can go to the next slide, please. And in this slide, we are summarizing what kind of tool do you need if you want to deal with a continuously changing problem as fraud. So as I said, if we were just detecting cats and dogs, I mean, we would just have a very complex machine learning system trained with TPUs, GPUs on billions of data points, and we would have an almost perfect system. And as you know, those systems sometimes can actually function even better than human beings. If you have like a face recognition system, I'm sure you have seen, you know, case studies where those AI systems actually perform better than humans, but not in this case, because for claim fraud, we have challenges. One of the challenges is fraud patterns continuously change. So what Taylor has presented is really the frequency of fraud. So not just the frequency, but the way it happens also is changing. And when the nature of fraud changes, then you need a continuously adapting machine learning system, but automatically continuously adapting machine learning system. You cannot just, you know, build a world, break the whole world down and create another world when change happens. So I liken this to condition monitoring systems. You know, many years ago, we used to have scheduled maintenance. So we waited until something was about to go wrong or it went wrong in some intervals, and then we fixed things. Now with continuous learning, we are saying, we know the world will change, so why don't we continuously adapt our system? That's the technology that we provide. Another challenge has been the false alarms. You know, when you see alarms all the time, and as an expert, you don't have means of you know, separating good from bad, then you basically just shut down that system, and you don't really want to have anything to do with it. It just says everything is an alarm. And you don't, you know, usually people are just giving one threshold, you know, make the threshold go up or down. If your threshold is up, you have less claims suspected. If the threshold is down, you have more claims suspected. But you need a lot more than that given as controlling mechanisms to the operators of these systems. So to reduce the false alarms, we are giving a number of things to the hands of the people. So it's not just explaining what's happening about the AI system, but also giving handles on how to operate that system. It can be selecting how to respond to certain things, taking actions. It can even be giving feedback, saying you used to think this is fraud, but this is not fraud. But also it can also be even updating the systems without knowing coding, without knowing data science. So we need to, and we have made these AI systems really as simple as operating a car. So we used to ask everyone, oh, do you want to operate a car? You know, do you want to do AI? You have to be a mechanical engineer if you want to operate a car. That's what we have been saying, and that's not the way to go. We should just be asking, do you know where to go? Yes, so then here's an AI car for you. If you know how to drive, you'll know where to go, and you'll need to adjust to it. You'll need to learn how to drive this, but this is something that you can do as an expert, even if you are not a machine learning expert. If you know your business, you should be able to operate these systems. And finally, being understandable is a key factor necessary, because whenever we see an alarm, we need to know what the underlying causes are. I'm not saying that we can always identify the underlying causes, but having an understanding of how the system decides sheds light on the root causes. And also it sometimes also sheds light on whether the system is working or not. Because as a person who has done AI for more than 30 years, I'm definitely not going to claim that AI systems are non-vulnerable. AI systems are always right. They are not always right. So if you have a system which is understandable, and if you have a whole village of people looking at that system, then if not one, the other person will identify if something is wrong with that system. And when people are given handles to change that system, they will be able to make the system adjust to change without out of costs and without out of delays. So those are, in my opinion, three pillars of what the perfect claims fraud solution should depend on as technology. We can go to the next slide, Doğan, if you want. And please feel free to interrupt, guys.
Yeah, no, this slide is very interesting, actually. Just a heads up, we have 7 minutes left. And I really want to cover the insights and show a peek of the tool as well. Of course,
yeah. So this we can just pass through this very fast. This tells us that people keep talking about having data scientists. Yesterday we were having a conversation with one of our clients' CEO, and he said that he doesn't want to hire hundreds of data scientists in his company. And as you see, in this graph, the x-axis shows the size of the premiums by some of the US insurance companies, and the y-axis shows the number of data scientists, as we have found on LinkedIn. The more your premium size as a company, the more data scientists you have usually, and if you have a smaller company, you have smaller number of data scientists. So what our client said was, I actually decided to outsource this to a company like Tazi, which has the data science resources. But what we are doing is really not just outsourcing, because I believe that the modeling, the AI models are really very close to the heart of an organization. It cannot really be outsourced. We really believe in upskilling our customers. So we really turn business experts, business analysts into people who can operate AI systems because we give them an easy to operate system. We can go to the next slide if you want. This is about what kind of AI is needed. Again, you need understandability. You need agility first. Insurance professionals are used to working with GLMs, which need to be trained on 5 years of data, and which are updated every year, if they are updated, maybe in every 6 months. But we really need agility, not just because the data is changing continuously, but also because to be competitive, you have to predict different things that you have never predicted before. So for example, the data acquisition costs might be really high. So instead of getting the data for every person, you might actually want to have prediction systems that will tell you what the predicted value is for a certain input, so that you can still operate and not pay for the data costs. So there are things that are happening that weren't before, and we need to create not just one AI systems, but many AI systems working together to be efficient. So we need agility, we need understandability, we need deployments to be really fast and easy, not just because data is changing, as I said, but also because we might want to put different AI systems working together. And we obviously need continuous learning. What we mean by continuous learning here is, as the data changes, the models should be updated automatically. And that update in an industry, regulated industry like insurance, obviously has to come with explanations. So as models are updated, you have to provide explanations so that you can answer the authorities about your system in a very efficient way. We can go to the next slide, please. And here I try to outline what kind of a system do you need. And in terms of these components, obviously the total cost of ownership is very important. As Taylor said, people may actually not be planning to spend more money than before, and insurance is becoming continuously a very competitive environment industry. So you need to be thinking about your costs. And while you might think that developing an in-house solution like using Python scripts or getting an AutoML platform is a good idea, it might look cheap initially, but the total cost of ownership is going to be really huge for those solutions. You need continuous learning. You need human in the loop, which means there is a human that understands the AI system and is able to update the system. And also you need the ability to be used by business people, because you have a small number of data scientists and you have a huge number of business people who know the domain, who are able to contribute to this learning system. So leaving them outside is a total loss. So the best of breed system really has to bring all of those things together to be very useful for these changing environments. Next slide, please. Yes.
Zehra, I want to, because we have 3 minutes left, I want to be able to give a peek to the users, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Because I want to see, I want to make them see, let them see the actual tool.
Yes. So these are some, and by the way, at the end of the presentation, we are going to give you a demo link. You are always welcome to request a demo. We would be more than glad to show this live to you. So here we just show some of the screenshots to show what the solution comprises of. This is about dynamic and customized dashboards, which enables everyone to look at the AI system and data in their own way. So everybody has a different understanding and different set of actions that they need to do about the AI system, the claim fraud detection system, and actions. So we provide those interfaces for individual people and in a dynamically changing way. So we really value this, and we can just create these in really a matter of hours for every person. We can go to the next slide. Again, indicators. While most models talk about just one indicator or two indicators, we are able to put those indicators together, and we do that automatically because AI systems are able to learn them. So for every instance, you are able to say why, and in combination of what indicators the system has decided for fraud. And again, these are learned automatically from the data, but as the fraud expert, you can also maneuver the system towards certain indicators as well. We can go to the next one. And this is one of the mechanisms that we explain the AI system to the experts. On the left-hand side, you see important variables, and any explainable AI system talks about variables that are used. But what is really more important is the interactive chart in the middle. So this is called a sunburst diagram. It's a decision tree actually, but it puts all the automatically extracted micro segments or patterns in front of you. And you can click through each and every one of these segments. You can see why a certain pattern is happening, who are in those segments, and what are the relationships between segments. So you are able to look at the whole picture using just one, your whole claim fraud picture using one picture, and you can actually interact with it and even take actions. And finally, data is important. So we always create profiles and explanations about your data so that, as Taylor said, data keeps changing and patterns keep changing. So with the previous interface, you are able to see how the patterns have changed. And here you are able to see how your data has changed so that you are able to see whether change is happening and how it is happening exactly. And finally, the data science recommendations is, I think, also very important, because you are not always going to have a data scientist with a PhD creating these systems. So we provide ways to filter the data, pre-process the data automatically. So we recommend things, and then you can actually create scripts to implement those feature transformations, so you don't have to do it as a business expert. So that's more or less what I want to say, Don. Thank you so much.
Zehra, that was that was amazing. Thank you so much. That was perfect. And then next time I will do better in time management. That's completely on me. I think you just covered everything we discussed before. And Taylor, you too. Thank you so much. We have to end the webinar now, so unfortunately no time left for the Q&A. However, what's going to happen next is we will consolidate the recorded session, and it will go out as a summary plus a video recorded video, and I will make sure that the participants that were here and that couldn't join as well, and the entire LinkedIn world have access to this. So thank you so much, and we will definitely include contact information for Zehra, Tazi, and Taylor as well, so that you can have follow-up conversations if you are interested.
Great.
All right.
Thank you
so much,
all the attendees.
All right. Thank you so much for your time, everyone. Hope to see you in the June webinar. All right. Bye.
Thank you, Doğan. Thank you, Taylor. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.